Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's Andrew Turner, founder and host of the G&T Sessions podcast. Today we have an amazing guest, Mr. Cedric Bollag. How are you, Cedric?
Good. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of course. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. So I've obviously joined you because I believe that you are in a very nice place in the middle of Europe. Is that right?
Yeah, that's true. Yes, we are actually in Zurich. That's, Switzerland is kind of like the epic center of Europe, which is really wonderful to be here and to live here. And I can only recommend that once like this whole thing with Corona like calm down a little bit, that you all come and visit.
Well, yeah, I mean, you see, we've got to get it sorted out before ski season next year, you see, haven't we? So, it's like, hurry up and get this vaccine sorted out, or whatever it is.
Actually, my real motivation to live in Switzerland is so we can go skiing.
Oh, really? Is it? Okay.
No, just kidding.
You see, as you can see, I've flown over in the G&T Session sponsored helicopter to Interlaken today, you see, so I'm not too far away from you, see, so that's good.
Yes, it's wonderful there, beautiful mountains, base jumping there. Interlaken is very well known for base jumping, so if you're
is it?
Come to Interlaken, yes.
That sounds pretty dangerous to me. You
Yeah.
You'd have a lot to drink before you do that, or maybe not.
I don't know.
So in terms of, thank you for coming on the show. I mean, one of the things that this is the thing about the lovely podcast family is that one of my other guests, Jonathan McGuinness, actually said you should get Cedric on the show because he's a great guy and he's going to tell you some really good stories. So there you go. You see, one of my other guests recommends another guest to come on. So it's like a multiplier effect. So
that's how.
I know that obviously because I think Jonathan spent some time in Zurich as well. So sometimes anyway, amongst these little global travels. So what gets you up in the morning these days then, Cedric? What's going on in Cedric's world?
Well, I mean, on a private level, like. Thank God we have 3 children, so that gets me definitely up very early in the morning.
Oh, wow.
They have 4 and under, so we're still like a very a little bit a lot to do in the morning, which is great with 3 young kids. And on a motivational level, like I get to spend every day, with a bunch of entrepreneurs and investors and see kind of like the future of not just the technology, but just the future, how people are going to use technology and are going to behave, kind of like see being built in front of my eyes. And to be part of this process with, so many different entrepreneurs who I'm in touch with on a daily basis, I mean, that is just a privilege to me. And I couldn't be happier, and definitely compensates for a lot of things that sometimes we struggle or we have a bad day, but to get up in the morning and knowing okay, we are part of building the future and the next generation, looking at my kids, we want to make the best out of it. And, making sure we build this tree right now so they have a better world to live in.
That's good. I mean, you must, I was surprised you get any sleep at all if you've got 3 kids.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like always, like you have to have a very, very good team around you. So I'm very, very fortunate that I have an amazing wife, and our youngest is just about 2 months. So
oh wow,
it's still a lot in her hands at the moment, and I'm just trying to be there to support as much as I can, especially also with the other 2 kids. And so it's good. Yeah, and in return, she lets me sleep.
Yeah, my 2 sons who are now 15 and 17, so you've obviously got a bit of catching up to do. They didn't sleep for 6 years. They didn't sleep through the night for 6 years. So I was obviously I had a few different jobs in my background, and getting up in the middle of the night and having to walk around our house trying to get them to go back to sleep was a challenge, to say the least.
I think it's very interesting that you say that, because I would say, my parents' generation was always their innovation in parenting was you're not allowed to shake your baby. That was kind of
really?
like what they.
Okay.
I mean, that's what I always heard. Also funny, also on my wife's side, also that was kind of like the thing that was in their generation, like to be very careful not to shake your baby too much. And I think in our generation, I think they made a lot of discoveries about like baby sleep. And I think my wife has figured it out to a certain extent, And our kids we used on them like this idea of the sleep training, and by 6 to 12 months they were sleeping through the night.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Our coach
was that boys or girls though?
So we have a boy, girl, and a boy. So our coach actually said that her kids all slept through the night by week 8.
Wow.
Yes.
Oh, we're obviously doing it. It's too late now, but we're obviously doing it wrong then.
Yeah, but I think this is like baby sleep. I think is one of the biggest innovations at the moment in terms of like new discoveries of making people's lives much easier.
That's good. Well, I suppose everybody being home and homeschooling and everything like that's been going on, and then it's a whole new world anyway. Yeah. So it sounds like you're quite active in the what you could call the startup scene.
Yes.
What's the backstory to that? Then did you just fall into that, or did you always kind of wake up to the fact that this thing sounds pretty cool, and not go into a traditional career, or have you had a traditional career?
Well, I would say the answer is no. I did not have a traditional career because I'm also fairly young, if you can say that, at 30 years old. But basically, so my story is like, yes, from a very young age, I was always interested in the latest tech and like, newest gadgets. Had like, by age of 18, I had maybe, 100 different phones already. And for me, that was like always kind of like I really enjoy like to try new gadgets, try new things, and kind of like be kind of like a first mover on these retail gadgets. And that kind of like, when I kind of like grew up a little bit, matured a little bit maybe, I discovered this whole world of startups where, there are like some courageous people who take a certain idea and bring it to life. And I think like this is like something that is like fascinating to see. And I think to a certain extent, it was definitely also with my, gap year that I spent in Israel, which extended to be 7 years, which I ended up being in Israel for 7 years. And my first job was actually, I was an innovation scout for a market research company. And my job was really to help our clients, which primarily were C-level people from major banks, to find like kind of like potential threats coming from startups. So,
oh, really? Right.
So, like trying to think outside of the box of kind of like, it's not just, okay, look, challenger banks, obviously they're a competitor, but you can also think like of other ways, like where, like a startup could become a potential threat. And that is kind of like, we had like monthly updates for our clients. And that kind of like was for me kind of like the trigger point where I said like, I want to be more in this space. And that's kind of like, there was the launch of my blog back then, 5 years ago, text-based. Didn't really work so well for me, but like then I switched into videos, producing videos. So that was also like a challenge because based on my financial background, academic financial background, like video editing was not part of it.
That wasn't your superpower. Yeah,
it wasn't my superpower. And so that was kind of like where I was standing. And that kind of developed. And then again, we moved back to Switzerland and I did my master's, still pursuing my hobby as a video content creator around startups in BC. And about like last March, I founded my company, decided to take this full time and see where it brings us.
Oh, wow. Okay. Oh, so you've actually become a founder of a tech company now.
Yeah, I mean, like we are more like I would say media / platform. I would say that we use a lot of tech, obviously, but I would say like our core is not at developing new software or anything like this.
Okay, so you like a kind of a, well, I think you said you do something around curation. Is it you're a curator? You're like like the Startup Museum or the Startup Art Gallery, and you're the curator.
Yes, yes.
Is that right?
Yes, that's something that is in development right now. So we're starting now with an MVP, which is almost finished. And then we're going to go out to our potential clients, speak to them, get their feedback, see how we can improve it. But what I can say for now, like on the record, is kind of like we are working on a platform where the goal is that my ultimate goal is that like someone who comes on there wants to see new interesting startups for various reasons, whether it's investing or imitating or hiring or acquiring, whatever it might be. But like you want to get to know the people around it. And that's kind of like what we saw a lot of times, also especially during my master thesis, which I did recently. I wrote about like the importance of getting to know the people, especially through video. So we were a little bit ahead of time, but like in my thesis, we found out that like basically like there's a much higher likelihood that someone invests in you if you provide a pitch deck and a video. And the reason for that is because people just see how you act and talk. And the more authentic this video is, the better. So again, like we saw an increased estimate of valuation in the companies that we spoke to. I mean, we spoke to the investors and see how they would value a certain company with or without a video on top of the pitch deck, and we saw there's a major difference. You know, so just as an entrepreneur, if you ask me like how can you get a higher valuation, make sure you send a video together with your pitch deck. Right.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, it's good you're recording this in video as well as audio, then, isn't it?
Excuse me?
It's good you're recording this in video as well as audio.
Yes, exactly.
So that's interesting. So you've actually done quite a lot considering you're so young. That's good.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I decided that I have 3 pillars in my life without like setting any priorities, but like I have family, I have my company, and then I have charity. And I try to kind of like divide my time among these 3 pillars and make sure I stay focused in each pillar, you know, so you have diversification in terms of like what you're dealing with day to day, but you also have kind of like you keep the focus on like what is really important. And you understand when are you doing charity work, when you're doing family, and when are you doing business. And that like solves a lot of problems.
So you said charity work, then what are you doing on the charity side? Then what's happening in that area?
I mean, like, you know, beyond giving like some small amounts of money to certain organizations, we also try to have an impact on a social issue here in Zurich for the Jewish community, which we're trying to solve, which is kind of like a bigger undertaking than I originally expected. But it's kind of like enabling certain groups within the Jewish community to do more things over the Shabbat, which is the Jewish day of rest. And which is a kind of like a communal project, and it just needs some organization and logistics. And that's kind of like the project I'm working on. And it comes in waves, so it's not occupying me like day in, day out. But like sometimes, like this week, I was busy with it for 2 days, and then I'm not at all for like 3 months, nothing to do.
Right. But I suppose it's good because it sounds like you've got the balance of obviously your family life and you're giving back through your charity stuff as well. So you get the balance of just all 24/7 with working, which obviously that's the danger, I suppose, in these kind of times is that you just work all the time and you don't get the balance.
Exactly. That's kind of like what for me is kind of like important to keep like this balance in life, on top of there's so many obligations and things you want to do on a day-to-day basis, so got to stay focused.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I had a guest on the other week who I'm publishing shortly, and they were talking about Elon Musk and about Elon Musk's work-life balance is, well, I don't know, hopefully it's improved now, but it was pretty much non-existent. He was sleeping in the office, when he was doing the SpaceX and Tesla stuff, and sleeping in the factory. So it is, I suppose it's that, I mean, brilliant. He's a brilliant guy, but it's actually how do you get the right balance in your life and make sure you hit all those kind of areas as well. So it's important.
Absolutely. I mean, and every person is very different. So like, some people, they need to sleep. Some people need to sleep less. I mean, like, you have to read the book, Why We Sleep. I don't know if you read this book. Did you read it?
Mm-hmm.
I think, like, even if I don't remember all the details, but I think my key takeaway from it is, like, if you sleep, you're probably going to live longer. And I think, like, if you sleep properly, you make good business decisions. If you sleep properly, you probably have you're less nervous, more kind of like this internal calm. And I think that is like more kind of like a key to a successful life. And I'm saying specifically life and not business, is like when you are able to like have a clear mind when you're awake, and sleep deeply when you're asleep, and make sure that you make the most time. Whether you sleep 4 hours or 12 hours, in the grand scheme of life, it shouldn't make a big difference, because, you want to stay healthy.
Well, there's different stages of sleep. So I was on a session the other week with the guy that they call, is in New York. He's called the Sleep Doctor.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard of him, but he ran a lecture for a few hours, and he talks about the different stages of sleep. Actually where you get where actually your body truly, regenerates and recovers. And sometimes people, obviously, because if you sleep too little a time, you never get into that particular time of rejuvenation. So effectively you get fatigue, and, eventually you hit the wall. So I agree with you. It's I think probably in the last 7 to 9 months, people have been getting a lot more sleep. But you can have too much sleep. I think you can spend too much time in bed. It's just getting the balance right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. So in terms of your what you're doing on the startup scene, it sounds like that you kind of jumped into it quite early. I mean, if I analogize to what when you were 18, 19 years old, that's when the kind of financial crisis was happening, in the late 2000s. And I suppose you were kind of like a teenager going through that experience. And now, but then obviously that's armed you in a certain way to deal with where we are now. So it sounds like it's equipped you, it's given you kind of a life experience for you to jump into this area. And obviously with the stuff you did in Israel with the banks, it sounds like quite an interesting role, that when you were doing this scouting for companies that are going to destroy the banks, even though we know from people like Chris Skinner that nobody's going to destroy banks. It's impossible.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Again, like for me, it was always like something that like I was interested in. And I think that like, when you look at crisis, I mean, at the beginning of like, what was it, March, April, around May, I think I spoke to a good friend of mine who told me he's been through 8 financial crises like in his lifetime.
Wow.
And I think, for me, 2008, as you said correctly, like I was still young. I do remember it though, but much fewer people were affected to it. A lot of people, but much fewer than now. And I think, I mean, like since I would say early 2019, I've been telling my wife that like, the stock market is an all-time high. Like, even though we're not into stock trading at all, but like, it was just like kind of like people were telling me like it's going to crash at some point. Like everybody was waiting for Black Swan. It wasn't about like if it's going to happen. It was more about when. And I think like the uphill since 2008 till 20, that was one of the longest upwards economically that we had in a long time.
Right. And what's your view on the future then on that? Is that going to continue, or what's the projections? Pays the Oracle, pays Cedric in Zurich.
I mean, I deeply believe in the future existence of humanity. I believe in increase of efficiency in the future, especially through technology, whether that's increased better gadgets, better AI, better algorithms, whatever you want to call it. But I do believe that like we aim as private, but also as business owners, to always become more efficient with what we do and our time. And this in itself makes our world to become better. And like they're economical cycles. Like we don't have to reinvent the wheel. So over time we will become more efficient. I think like now we had a huge bump of increased efficiency because people are not flying for 30-minute meetings all around the globe. And I mean, I think it's going to continue like this. So I'm very optimistic. I think whenever people ask me about my opinion about the current crisis, I think there's two very different topics that we have to differentiate. We have the health part, the economical part. And obviously they're very much together, but like if someone is healthy in today's world, I think we have a lot like already to be grateful for. And economically, I really believe it will be a better time. And I know it's hard for a lot of people, and I know that like it's not such a simple situation, but it will be better. It will get better. So like we have to get through this health crisis and make the best out of it.
So what's your view on the economics of that then? Do you think? I mean, because obviously there's certain people in the stock market that have been doing pretty well during the pandemic, and then I know some people are obviously starting to recover now. But any view on that?
No, I mean, again, like I think everything crashed and it rebounded. So I mean, again, like I'm like I'm very bad at predicting financial markets. But again, like if you ask me overall on the long term, everything will be worth more if you come in the right places, right time.
Yeah. So you mentioned you did your master's degree, and you said that your research was around startups and about how they best. What was it about? How they best secure funding, or was it about how they best secure investors, or what was the thinking around that?
No, the official title was how investors are using video as a due diligence tool.
Okay.
So how and what impact does it have on kind of like the valuation and the thought of the investors of the likelihood of a successful company? And that kind of like was for us, we did a qualitative and a quantitative research. So to compare this. And when we're doing the quantitative, I was talking to about 20 different investors during an interview, and I would ask them, and an interesting part about it was that they would all tell me like, look, Cedric, it's very interesting, the videos and everything, but like we would never invest just based on a video without meeting the people and so on. And I would say, okay, like I understand, like, and that's definitely like fair enough. But when we then went to the qualitative part, I would ask the people to fill in a survey, and we had like a control group and the other group, and one group got just a pitch deck, and the second group got the pitch deck and a small video about 2 minutes of one of the interviews I've done in the past. And then we asked them a couple of very simple questions, like, would you invest in a company? Yes or no? How much would you value the company? Gave them a range, How likely do you think that this company will succeed? And I don't fully recall the exact numbers, but the likelihood of people who would invest, the group that like got also a video, was significantly higher.
Right.
And I think that is just like super crucial. I mean, like, like it also opens, I mean, there's a lot of difficulties with the research we did. I mean, the group in general was not so big. I think we had a total of like 50 people that filled out the form. So like, you can always do like more.
Yeah.
But I think overall, I think what was interesting was that like, there was like an indication that like the valuation is significantly higher for people who watched an interview. And it's significantly higher the likelihood that the investor thinks that the company is successful just because we added a video, because everything else was the same.
Yeah, I mean, based on, I mean, I don't disagree with you. I think that, so my experience of working in Silicon Valley, obviously, there's very much a culture of, getting to know the founders, getting to know the founding team. But obviously, I presume, did your work spring up from the fact that about the pandemic because people were, is that because, why were you looking at the relationship between video and investors? Is that because you believe because you need to move on the thinking around how you do investment decisions? Is that what you?
No. I finished my master's October 2019, and I handed in my master's thesis like 6 months before. So like, it's been a while since I finished my thesis. No, it was way before. I would say now it was just more amplified. I already back then deeply believed in a world where you are not investing just in your friends and family around you, especially early stage. And I believe in a world where, I mean, like now it sounds ridiculous, but I believe in a world where you don't have to meet each other to make an investment, even if it's early stage. I'm not saying not to get to know each other, but I'm saying that like I think a lot of it can be streamlined in a way that like already at the beginning stages, before you even get to meet the founder, you already get a sense of, is this someone that I want to work with?
Yes.
Is this something that like has like some sympathy? That is their empathy, which is also like some of the key words of this year, you know, like, so like this is something that I feel like can be very, very well done also over like podcasts and videos and so on. So in our platform curated, like what we're going to do is like we're going to use our content, obviously self-produced content, but also third-party content where we will be embedding these videos and podcasts of early stage founders and investors into our platform. So you can basically not just get like a sense of who this person is, but not just only to get like the data that like this person is about, you know, like contact details and company, like you get on Crunchbase and LinkedIn and wherever, but you also get visual and audio of these hopefully authentic interviews and podcasts.
Yeah, so you kind of get to know the kind of personality and the you know, get to know the kind of the human behind the idea.
Exactly.
Yeah, because it is a bit. I mean, I suppose Crunchbase is the classic kind of reference point for, but it's just like a big database, isn't it? It's very impersonal. You don't really get a sense. You got a mugshot or a headshot of the founders, but you don't really get a sense of what they're like. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and what I think could be very, very interesting over time is like, you know, to follow people's journey, you know, like think about it, like every time you give like a video interview, like it will come directly in our database and then an investor comes and sees from 2010 to 2020, 45 different interviews. And then you can see like, you know, you can see a journey, you can see like where people are going. I mean, like a lot of times when investors reject you for an investment, they will tell you, it's a very interesting case, but let's talk again in 6 months. So why do they do that? Number one, they don't want to lose out on the fact that like they say no to you and then you're big time. You're in big time. And the second thing is like they don't want to, they want to see how you are performing over 6 months. So if I tell you, look, in 6 months we will have 10 new clients and you come back and you have 2, then we say, look, you underperformed. If you come back and you made like 20 new clients, then let's say like, oh, wow, let's talk again. And I mean, like in all of most of the
that called hedging.
Hedging, yeah. I mean, a lot of times, you know, like this is kind of like where we feel like we can save a lot of times to entrepreneurs when we like provide this for them.
Yeah, but I suppose the other thing I would observe with founders and entrepreneurs is that they're not always natural presenters. Yeah,
but that's good. That's good. You want to get their authentic self.
No. So I suppose what it does is it's how they develop their superpowers to be able to project themselves across in a video context. Yeah. And get across their idea and articulate get across their passion, get across the reason why they're doing it, why they're putting everything into it. Because I think what I've observed with some people that are quite introverted is when you say the right words to them, they suddenly come alive. They kind of like this. They kind of like, ooh! It's like you've put a fire under them. Yeah.
Yes.
You know, if they've experienced a personal issue or a problem, and that's why it's a trigger for them actually creating that business, then you actually, you know, what I see, it's like a sea change. It's like you flick the switch with them. So I don't know if you've noticed that.
Yes, I do. I mean, what I believe and what excites me also is like these people talk about their field. They talk about like the industry they're in, and they're talking about themselves. And like this, like usually, leads to very, very interesting insights for various people. So, it doesn't have to be only investors, but like, someone who is developing a medical health platform obviously had to deal with like, some market research and understand like where the market is currently standing. And this is kind of like the knowledge that also in my interviews, when I interview entrepreneurs, I want to give them the opportunity to show like their knowledge, their insights, and like what they have learned about the industry that maybe you can't find in any report.
Yeah, it's the kind of offline commentary and the narrative that you don't always get from the kind of the written word. Yeah. So in terms of your 10-year plan, then what's it looking like for you? Then what's the Cedric plan? We're now in 2020. We're now coming towards the end of 2020. What does Cedric's world look like in 2030?
Well, I mean, like I really want to build this platform by then. I mean, like I'm in this for the long run. So I don't want to. I mean, I would love to sell the company at some point because people see so much value in it. But I think at this stage, like, 10 years is very long. It's very, very hard. But can imagine, my son to be 14 by then. But yeah, I mean, like,
life will get more interesting then when he's 14.
Life gets more interesting. Yeah, I mean, life is pretty interesting right now. Like, so, yeah, I mean, like, I want to have like a nice company that like is sustainable. Has a nice profitability, and like we are not losing the focus on like making sure that we can help like the entrepreneurs, and making sure that we can really have, as I said at the very beginning, a data-driven impact on these. So when I say that, like, I really want to be able at some point to be able to measure certain key performance indicators, KPIs, where we can, for example, track, viewership, which is pretty easy, but like, can we track views? Can we track sales? Can we track investor interest? All these kind of things, I think we can do very, very well, hopefully by then.
So it sounds like you're building like a video version of PitchBook.
Yeah. I mean, that would be definitely, but again, like PitchBook, same as Crunchbase. This is like get as much data as possible. That's not our
It's
approach.
like a data crawler. It crawls all the data and gets it all in one place, kind of thing. It's a kind of aggregation point, isn't it? That's what it does. But I think with your idea around video, I think look at how the success of YouTube, the success of, I suppose all everybody's going video now, aren't they? It's the kind of, even LinkedIn is now going video.
Yes.
So I suppose it's that, how do you bring that other dimension to the dialogue and the insight on that company? I think it's a great idea. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
So I mean, what in terms of the startup scene in Zurich, is that pretty buoyant?
I'm sorry, but I don't understand the word buoyant. But
well, buoyant means, is it kind of quite vibrant? Is it quite
vibrant?
Quite a hot scene in Zurich, or is it in other places? I think there's a kind of there's a place called Crypto Valley, I believe I came across before, which is kind of I think just by the lake.
Yeah, I mean, like it's very interesting, how it's going, what's going on here. I think two main kind of like startup factories are the like basically like there's a lot of accelerators, but also the university. I think they're producing very good and high quality tech startups, deep tech startups. A lot of them come out of PhDs. So, students who write a PhD, commercialize it, and then run a company, especially also in computer vision. That's what it's called. Computer vision. Disney has a very big R&D center here right around the corner. Mm-hmm. And, they're scouting basically like the PhDs before they even started writing, so like very, very early on, they make sure they have their fingers on the pulse to make sure, like, they see like what the latest is going to be, and then like, they commercialize it, buy it, integrate it, whatever it might be.
Interesting. Yeah, it's good, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm based in London normally, so it's obviously London is kind of, I suppose, I think London is still viewed as the fintech centre of Europe. But as you mentioned, the thing that you touched on a bit earlier about the banks, because I've been working with some banks recently as well, is that this thing about what do they, the neobanks, the new banks, obviously create the situation where they force the kind of agenda to try and get the traditional banks to actually move a little bit, or you've got like a strategy where some banks then just acquire the startups to then mothball the innovation to try and stifle the innovation. I suppose I've seen two different strategies on that, but it's quite an interesting space, I think, to try and get the fintechs to try and challenge the traditional lenders and traditional banks.
Mm-hmm. I just, I'm not sure if you know this, but Credit Suisse just launched a new bank, which called Credit Suisse X, CSX. And basically what they do is like, they just copied Revolut and 26, whatever you want to call them. And I spoke to them and I asked, like, why would you not just buy them? I mean, like, there's companies that like have millions of clients already, all onboarded, everything is ready. And they said to me, look, we can do that. That financially, it's not even the problem. The problem is the integration of these people into the current systems. And they're like most likely cheaper off to just build it themselves from scratch and see if there is a demand versus buying someone.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, that's what they told me.
Because the systems integration and the people integration is too difficult. The client onboarding is too difficult onto their own.
Yeah, it's just not the same compliance, and needs a lot of there's a lot of legal issues around it.
It seems to be like any new startup now, because of the Elon Musk SpaceX thing. Everybody seems to put a word and then X at the end. I don't know why.
Maybe, I don't know.
Maybe you should put an X at the end of your name of your startup.
Maybe, yeah, curated X.
Well, maybe. Well, you heard it here first. So in your journey, I mean, I suppose one of the things we're talking about on the G&T Sessions podcast is about growth. Yeah, about personal growth, business growth. Sounds like you obviously had some experience in some interesting places, like with your Israel experience. What I call Silicon Beach, or I know you call it Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
And then you've obviously got the situation where you've got the business journey, and I suppose it sounds like you're starting now your launch. You're bringing your new business to market. I mean, in your journey, one of the things I talk about is the phrase peaks and valleys. Yeah. So, what would be some stories that you would share around that? Around any experiences you've had on peaks or valleys, especially when I've got some mountains behind me.
Yes. I mean, peaks for me, it was definitely when I finished my master's. And for me, I'm not sure if I said that already, but for me, kind of like when I finished my master's, I was at a crossroad. Should I, continue kind of like my hobby and make it into my full-time job? Or should I go find a full-time job? And I felt like I built up a lot of things already that like would have been kind of like unfortunate to stop it at this stage and not giving it a shot. But for me, and again, like everybody's different, I personally needed kind of like this validation from someone who would join me as an investor. So for me, it was important to find someone that is going to invest in our company, that feels that he or she believes in me as a person that can do that as an entrepreneur, but also believes in the idea that we're having. Like for me, that was important. And for me, that was really like kind of like the peak when after only 3 months of looking around for a potential investor, we found someone, or I found someone that was willing to invest the money. And I think that for me was really kind of like a sign that like, okay, look, give it a shot, take the risk. There's not much, there's money to lose, but like, give it a shot. And that was definitely one of the peaks. And I think, whenever we hear about like now when we get feedback from entrepreneurs, when we get like, quotes or testimonials from entrepreneurs, like how impactful our video was, that is kind of like, what kind of like is my currency of how I feel like this is we're doing good by helping these people. And, the valley on the other side, they're very low. The monetization strategy is not always working out the way we wanted it to be. It's not always so simple to really find like a way. How can we charge? Who should we charge? And, like acquiring new clients. Like these are not so simple questions that we sometimes have to answer and sometimes have to figure out. And for me, I think like what gets me through these valleys is definitely like, my wife, my family, being able to just leave my phone in the office and say like, okay, just give me some headspace and let me think about it. And on the other hand, it's also like knowing that like we, to a certain extent, we're all in this together called life, so no one has the answers for everything. And, sometimes you got to listen to the experts and sometimes you have to know when not to listen to them. And for me, that's kind of like, knowing that like it's a process, it's a journey, and keep making progress, moving forward, trying new things. I think that's kind of like what keeps me during these very lows.
So what you're saying is that so one of your values currently is your challenges is a bit like, how do you monetize your idea? How do you convert that into something that's a profitable business in the long term? Is that
yes. I mean, like right now, like it's classic. Like now we're working more on project-based revenue, and we want to move that into subscription, and that's just like a painful road, and we have to go there because on the long term, it's just going to be better. But like at the moment, it's a big struggle and painful and not really clear what the client is going to pay for. Is he willing to pay for it? Will they like our MVP? Will they say like, no, like this is garbage? Or we'll see. We have to make progress and make the proper market research to figure out like
the joys of being a founder. The joys of being a founder, Cedric.
Sorry?
It's called the joys of being a founder, Cedric.
The joys of being a founder, yes. That's how it is.
So it's interesting you said about you felt that that you had to have some validation. I thought that was quite interesting, thing to say. Why did you feel like you had to have validation from an investor?
That's a good question. I don't know. For me, it was just like important that like, whenever people ask me kind of like, who is on your team, like we have a nice team and everything is good. But like to have someone prestigious with a very good reputation within the startup scene, which is the case from our investor, I think that brought a lot of value to us. And, kind of like shows that like we're serious. We want to make this like successful. And I mean, it's interesting.
I suppose the reason I'm asking is because I've personally, founded companies, out of my own pocket, and then I've also got involved in companies where we took no VC, and we use sales to drive the growth of the company. So it's kind of through customer acquisition, you create the balance sheet, and I suppose that is pretty tough. That
yes.
So I suppose what I was observing is since the Aileen Lee, coined the phrase unicorns, and obviously since Google and Facebook and all those guys listed and IPO'd, there seems to be this fascination with using other people's money to fund your startup, I suppose, rather than actually using your own money to fund your startup. So I suppose I wasn't sure if you got any views on that.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on the case and the jurisdiction you're in. I mean, like right now, I'm here in Switzerland. My company is founded here in Switzerland, and that brings some, financial, not burdens, but financial obligations.
Financial kind of foundations you have to put in place.
Yeah. And basically, like here in Switzerland, if you want to build or want to found a company in LTD, you have to put down 100,000 Swiss francs. And that is just as someone who just finished a master's. For us as a family, that was not possible to put that down.
Right.
And if you don't do that, then you just have certain liabilities as a founders that I didn't like. I'm not worried of failing. This is not my concern, but my concern is like, I want to make a clear separation between my family and my business for obvious reasons. And this was only guaranteed by having 100,000 Swiss francs fully paid into our LTD.
Right.
By being able to do that, like I'm able now to like fully separate between these like family and business. And if I didn't have that, like that would not be possible. There will always be a certain liability resting on me.
Right. Yeah, I suppose it's that definition of how there's that it's a difficult one. It's a difficult one about where you draw the line, or can you draw a line, or does it become a bit of a fuzzy line, or it becomes a bit grey. But and I suppose that depends on your own personal situation. But no, I mean, I think because it's the same in Germany. I think you've got to have a minimum capital sum you've got to raise to establish the business as a legal entity.
I mean, you bring it yourself, or you find someone who is able to do that for you.
Interesting. No, I mean, I think so. So, I mean, in terms of the this today's episode, I mean, one of the things I was going to say to you was, I mean, if given you've spoken to all these founders and all these entrepreneurs, I suppose one of my final questions was about the things that you've found that you from those conversations, I suppose, so if you think about, I know you're only young now, you're younger than me, but the thing about the kind of what I would call the pearls of wisdom. So what are the pearls of wisdom that you've found and you're learning yourself, that if you were talking to yourself, your younger self, what would you explain there would be? What would be your guidance?
I would start with definitely gratitude. Like every day that we can get up and are healthy, I think is a successful day. And I think that patience, and remember that it's a journey, and it's your own personal journey. And if I was younger myself, and my wife and I, we also spoke about this a lot about, you always want to be at the next step. You're single, you want to have a girlfriend. You're a girlfriend, you want to be engaged. You're engaged, you want to get married. You're married, you want to have a first child. You have a first child, you want the second one. And that's how life progresses, and that's not necessarily bad, but it's a certain awareness that we have to establish that to be happy with the current situation. Doesn't mean you should not want to have a second child. It just means that let's be grateful that we have a child. And let's be grateful for being engaged. Let's be grateful for the current situation that we are in right now. And I think it's even more severe on the financial side. You have 10,000 Swiss francs in revenue, you want 20. You have 20,000 Swiss francs in revenue, you want 100. And you have a salary of 100K a year, you want 200. You have 1 million, you want 2 million. It's always you want to get to the next step. And that's good. It's good. It's good to want to go to the next step. But it should not take away from the gratitude that we are in a certain process, that we are in it right now, and make sure that we enjoy the moment that we're in it right now. And I struggle with this a lot. Should we spend the money? Should we not spend the money? And, what is the next steps? Where are we going? What should we do? And so on. But I think in general, just to enjoy the moment that we're in right now, without losing the motivation and the passion to move and get to the next level, I think is something that is super important to keep in mind. And I wish I would have started working on this earlier in my life. I wish I would have, enjoyed. I mean, I remember you want to get into high school, and then you're finally out of high school, you want to go into university, and then you're into university and you're just annoyed to go into class. instead of like, saying like, wow, I made it into high school. Let's enjoy the moment. Now looking back, I mean, high school was the best time of my life.
Yes. So what you say is be in the moment and cherish the moment. Yeah.
Yes. So again, like for me, being able to run my own business at this age, having, a great team, having a great investor, having successful, supportive family, as well as my wife and the kids, but also my parents. I mean, like there's not much more I can ask for, and everything else is, depends what you believe in. If you're religious, it's up into God's hands. If you believe in something else, it's up to luck, whatever. But we do our most that we can to go into the right direction. And bottom line, like some people become successful at 45, some people at 15, some people at 25, some people only at 60. There's no one way fits it all. So that's kind of like my mindset and what I try to visualize every day.
Okay, that's good. I like it. I agree with your piece around be in the moment, because I think sometimes it flies by too fast. So I suppose my final question is then what are you most excited about at the moment?
What I'm most excited about, I mean, like I'm very excited to get this chance to try new things, to work on the new product that we are launching, hopefully Q1 2021, and that's kind of like what I'm excited about. Like to see how we can progress, how we can try new things, work on new things, and so on. I think again we have a great network of people that like are supportive. We have a great network of potential investors that hopefully are going to invest by us. And so that's what's excited me. And again, that's on top of like what I said in the beginning. Like I'm certainly enjoying like spending time with entrepreneurs and founders and see how I can support them on their journey.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the number of people that are on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if you know, there's 300 million people. No, there's 700 million people on LinkedIn. Yeah,
that's crazy. I didn't know.
But there's only 350 million people that are active, and there's less than 1% actually post anything.
Okay.
Which I thought was quite astounding. And then I've just checked actually. So there's 675,000 companies on Crunchbase.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. I'm giving you a target now. You see, 1 million. Let's get 1 million companies on curated.ch.
Yeah, I mean, like we want to be really much into early stage. So by us, it will be that like probably after 5 years they will drop out. Yeah, I mean, we estimated
that's a BHAG. It's a big, hairy, audacious goal. You see, Cedric.
I mean, like we estimated that like globally 1.5 million new businesses are established every year, of which about I mean it's hard to estimate how much are really like tech-based or early stage startups. So we estimate around, let's say, 20 to 50,000 of these are relevant for our platform yearly.
Oh, so they have to be a certain stage and they have to be tech companies. That's what you're saying is the kind of criteria.
I mean, yeah, it has to have an innovative component to it. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
But again, like by us, it's anyways more founder focused and people focused. So, like the same person can have different companies. So again, like out of the 8 billion people that live on the earth, we want to have like the major people who found companies and make sure we track them.
Right. Okay. That's fantastic. So, I mean, I suppose my final question would be then about how do people find out a bit more about what you're doing and track you, I suppose, and understand your progress in 2021.
Yeah, I mean, for now, I think the best would be to just follow me on YouTube, globaltechbox.com.
Okay.
You can go onto the website, globaltechbox.com. There you have the links to all the different social media channels. I think YouTube is the one that we're going to focus even more on the end of this year, but also in the beginning of next year. We're really going to focus on strengthening our YouTube game. And you can also sign up to our newsletter, which comes out every Friday, where we talk about, obviously the videos that we have produced that week, but also about like the latest you have to know about the European, mainly startup and venture capital world.
Fantastic. That's really good, really good. Well, I think I'm definitely going to have to subscribe to that. And you to subscribe to the G&T Sessions channel as well, and soon get some more subscribers. So thank you. So thank you very much for coming on the show today, Cedric. It's been an absolute pleasure. I hope you enjoyed it. And thank you for joining us from lovely Zurich and lovely Switzerland. Speak to you soon. Thanks so much for your time.